Hey everyone, welcome back to another post status webinar. And I've got my friend Michelle Frechette on from Underrepresented in Tech. And we're going to be talking about diversity and helping the underrepresented break into WordPress, break into tech. And but first I wanted to say thanks to Michelle for being on here. We have back-to-back meetings, by the way. Did you know this?
I saw that. We do.
I have the privilege to serve with Michelle on Big Orange Heart Foundation. We're starting a U.S. nonprofit based on the one that Dan Mabey started, originally WP and Up, then became Big Orange Heart. And so we actually have, I've been talking to Michelle quite a bit the last couple of months.
We're besties now.
Exactly. And her partner at Underrepresented in Tech, Allie, is not feeling too well today. So Michelle and I are going to have a lovely chat. If you have questions as we go for Michelle, please post those in the Q&A button right below the video where you see us. And but Michelle, first and foremost, so could you tell us a little bit about yourself and then how Underrepresented in Tech got started?
Absolutely. So as you said, I'm Michelle Frechette. My day job, I am the head of customer success for GiveWP. So I work with nonprofits and underserved populations around the world on a daily basis. So you can see where my sympathies lie and where my passions are just through that. And I love what I do, but I like to do even more than what I do that I get paid for. And so hence the work that I do with Big Orange Heart and some of the other things that I contribute to the WordPress community. Allie Nimmons and I have had conversations, going back way before, the race thing started happening last year in the US, that kind of coincided with the pandemic and all of that and the political unrest that was happening, and really started talking about what it means to be an underserved person or an underrepresented person in the WordPress space specifically, and then technology at a greater level. And we wanted to try to find a way that we could suggest people to other people. So like if you have a podcast and, I look at the lineup of all the people, all the guests you've had, and I see a lot of white men. Are you really serving the true diverse public that makes up your podcast? Chances are no, because there's a lot more diversity in the world than there is white men. And I'm not to say that white men aren't great, right? So you're all doing a great job, but there's more perspective and there's more experience in the world than just that one perspective. There's women, there's people with disabilities, there's people of color, there's people in the LGBTQ community, there's neurodivergent people, and there's people that are older than what what you would normally find in technology. And all of those people are not the people that you usually find on stage at conferences, on podcasts as guests, writing guest posts, and being hired in, for dev and other kind of jobs within WordPress and technology. So we started to think, what could we do when people come? Because, people know who I am. They ask me all the time, do you know anybody? They ask Allie, do you know anybody? And so we started to put together a spreadsheet in Google Docs and very quickly thought, maybe people should be giving us permission before we start recommending them out to the world. And so we started to talk about what that might look like. And through a conversation just like this one, where we got together on Zoom, we decided that a website that we could build a database that people could self-select into, and then others could search through to find matches for their projects or their jobs would be what would serve us best. And so as we were talking, I went right into my GoDaddy account and registered underrepresentedintech.com. And from there, it was kind of born. One of the most important things to us is that nobody pays to be listed in our directory and nobody pays to search the directory. And some people have asked us, well, I understand not charging people to be in the directory, but why aren't you charging people to search the directory? And that's because a lot of people won't pay to search a directory. And therefore, you're still taxing and you're still making those underrepresented people have to jump through hoops to be found. And so the whole idea is that this is free to search, it's free to use, it's our gift to the community, if you will, to make sure that there's access to underrepresented people and that those underrepresented people have a way to be showcased.
I love it because you're lowering the barrier. Is what you're doing. You're putting more visibility on this vital subject. And I love on your about page, it says demystifying diversity. And I'm going to play the role of Obviously I'm white guy. But as I built my previous company and current, and thinking through how do I pull people in diversity, this is exactly for me. Trying to think through, okay, who do I know? Oftentimes when I recruited over 10 years at iThemes, it was just the people I knew. And that was obviously the people I saw at the same conferences you're talking about,
Mhm.
same people groups and things like that. And so I want to really dig into that too, because I want to help people that are listening like me that may be running a company and want to promote diversity
Mhm.
within their team.
Right.
I've seen a bunch of studies and thoughts about that. You want a diverse team. You don't want people just like you. And now I'm not talking about skin color or sexual orientation or religion or any of those things, but just you don't want people that just think like you, and having those diverse. So I get it. Um, in all those senses, and I want it in all those senses. And for those people out there that are looking to promote diversity within their own organization, I want to get to that in
Mhm.
just a second. So you've obviously started this because it's a passion of yours and Allie's. Um, and you've got submissions already in your database and people
Yeah.
on the other side. So tell me a little bit about that. What have you been hearing from people that have been saying, "Hey, here am I. I want to get into the database, and I want to be found, and I want to break into tech, or get a good position in a WordPress type company."
Exactly. So people have been super excited. We're still getting the word out, of course. It's something that's kind of new. And people often think, oh, it's not for me because what do I have to offer? But the truth is, we all have something to offer. If you're looking for a job, if you like speaking, if you like being included, this is an opportunity to do that. And it doesn't mean that if somebody reaches out to you that you can't say no, right? So if somebody reaches out to you for a project and it really doesn't fit with what you want to do, you're welcome to decline that, right? But you can't decline it if you haven't been offered the opportunity. So the whole idea is to get as many people in that database as possible to help them be found and to help organizations and projects be able to be more inclusive. And as you said, offer greater perspective and experience at that table when you're building your projects and you're putting things out into the world. Makes a
I,
difference.
and I'm not making excuses at all, but oftentimes, most of the time, I'm just in my bubble, you know. And I think this is about getting outside of the bubble, and you're trying to ask ask the groups that are underrepresented, hey, and then someone like me can go, okay, when we're doing our next post status live or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
kind of come here and go, because I'm here on your opportunity page, and it's speaking on a podcast, writing a guest post, talk about SEO. That's fantastic, because now this is a resource for us to go and not really have an excuse for say we didn't at least do our due diligence, to try to get diversity on this panel or this workshop or the job that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of the things that comes with being underrepresented is that feeling of imposter syndrome sometimes, right? Because
Mm,
when you look at the people sitting at the table, that proverbial table, right, and you see that none of them look like you, then you start to self-doubt whether or not you actually belong there. And so if people reach out and scooch over and make room at the table, and
hmm
invite you to sit next to them, that's an entirely different experience than tapping somebody at on the shoulder and saying, "Can you make room for me?" Right? So it's much more comfortable if we all kind of scooch over and make room at the table than to try to ask people to wedge their way in. One of the things that we hear often is, especially about hiring, is, well, anybody can apply. I'm not stopping people of color from applying for that job. But the truth of the matter is, depending on how you're representing your company, how you're representing that job opportunity, you actually may be making the barrier to entry way too high for somebody, or making it really uncomfortable for them to join. And so there's ways that you can increase the opportunities for people, and outreach is one of those things. Asking somebody to apply for a job doesn't mean you're guaranteeing them that job. It's just saying,
mm,
I'd like to look at your body of work and see if we're a good fit for each other.
that's really good. Going back to like if you're the inclusivity and being inviting, I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was you, but talking about the Pac-Man strategy. So this
Yeah.
is this is old school for me. Pac-Man, where you kind of leave an opening. You're in a circle of people at a conference, like a word camp. Hopefully, we have some soon.
That'd be
And
nice.
leaving that little opening to know that, hey, we're not actually an exclusive crowd. You can come in and join.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, it's to me, I want to hear your feedback is the value of just a smile to someone when you're at a conference, particularly like a word camp, and showing that, hey, recognition of another human being, no matter who they
Mm-hmm.
are, smiling, knowing, just saying hi, or just that simple smile, I think goes a long way. But when you're thinking about conferences, because hopefully we will have some word camps coming up, what are some things you think about that we can pull in the underrepresented at, let's say, a word camp? And then I'm going to get to, after this, I actually want to talk more about what you just brought up, which are the objections you hear, and
Mm-hmm.
talk through some of those things too.
Sure.
So, like
Yeah,
conference.
so conferences, the number one thing that we see at conferences isn't necessarily who's attending, but who's actually speaking. So when you're putting together your list of who's speaking at a conference, take a step back and look at the people who've applied. If they all look like you have not done a good job at recruiting people to speak at your conference. Several years ago, it might have been 2 years ago, there was a conference, and forgive me for not remembering which conference it was, but maybe that's a good thing. There's a conference in Europe, and they had all men, literally all men were on the lineup. And they came under some pretty big fire for not having any women speaking at the conference. And their response was, well, women didn't, qualified women didn't apply. Well, that's not good enough, right? There's so many qualified women. Did they know about it? Did you ask people to apply to speak? Did you do a bunch of outreach, or did you just kind of let it go between the people who already, were already thinking about applying? They came under so much scrutiny that they actually ended up having to cancel the event, because when they started to tap women after hearing the criticism, every woman was like, you're not going to tokenize me. I'm not going to step into that mire now, because the issue's already there, and I'm not going to be the person to band-aid it for you. You need to think about those things in advance. So if you want to have more diversity attending your conference, then you have to have more diversity represented in the faces of the people who are speaking at your conference and who are organizing it. So if everybody on your org team looks exactly the same too, then you've already also doing a disservice to the community.
That's good for sure. I think I remember recalling that. So, it occurs to me, if I'm a conference organizer, one, now I have a database to search underrepresented in tech. But I think you laid out some of the things that we can do. Go out and intentionally ask, hey, call for speakers, any underrepresented people of color, uh, uh, female, or things you can think of for these
Mm-hmm.
sets of topics we're looking for. It seems like that's a first start to me, and just reaching out who could talk on this that aren't typically represented in my conference would be one way, in addition to searching your database. Do you have some other tips for a conference organizer?
Yeah, absolutely. It basically, take a look through the people who have spoken at other camps, other conferences. Look at some of the people who are representing already. See if those people might be interested in also coming to speak at yours. And then also you can just kind of look through. I like Twitter, because Twitter tends to be where a lot of tech folks land. But look through hashtags, look through things like that. Look who's being vocal about the things that you want talked about, and see who can bring diversity to your conference that way too.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to be in a database, but there are still so many people out there who have so much to contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've kind of talked about conference stuff. I want to switch gears to the team side.
Mhm.
And we'll put me up for this one. Okay, let's say I own a company, and I have owned a company where I hire people. Give me some steps again to making sure I am broadening the scope as best as possible, for pulling diversity onto my team intentionally.
Mhm. So look at the language that you're using on your website, and look
Mm,
at the imagery that you're using on your website. If you're using stock images, are they all white people? Are they all men? Are they all 20 somethings? If you're
mhm,
really heteronormative that way, then you are really not going to be able to diversify as much, because people look at that and say to themselves, do I belong here? Do I fit in here? Nobody also wants to be tokenized, like I'm going to be the one woman on the team, or I'm going to be
mhm.
the one over 50 on the team, or whatever it is, which I'm over 50 and I'm a woman, right? So so some of those kinds of things. I don't want to be the only one. I don't want to be tokenized that way. Also, language really, really matters, and people don't necessarily hear things in their own head from other people's perspectives, which is why sometimes it's great to have a consultant come in and take a look at those things for you. I looked at somebody's intake form, and the language that was used after the whole job description said, if you think you might be a good fit, then apply below. So if and might are actually disqualifying words, right? So as somebody who already isn't sure that they might fit at that table, that if and that might make me stop from applying, and I might be the person that you need on your team. So instead of saying if you think you might, right? So those are like words that are very, very tentative. Instead say apply for this position below. People already are going to decide whether or not they're a good fit based on what you've already said. Encourage the application. The worst thing that happens is you disqualify them for whatever reason. They're not a good fit, but don't help them disqualify themselves because they have self-doubts, as opposed to they just aren't the right fit for the job.
That pairs with what you're talking about with imposter syndrome. Most of these people groups probably have huge sense of unbalanced imposter syndrome about it. And so you're saying on those pages, try to be as open and welcoming. I mean, as much as I know you talked about photos and too, and I like the language part. You know, I don't know. I'm trying to get to a question here of, and I know you put on the site too, like, hey, we aren't HR experts. We aren't, this, but language that would be inviting to any group of people to apply. I know we said if you might, that those two things are kind of indicators. You're trying to get as many applicants from underrepresented groups. Do you have any more suggestions regarding language? I really like that.
Absolutely. So if you are really truly trying to grow a diverse team, because you want those diverse experiences, you want those outlooks, you want all of that comes with diversity, say so. Say we're looking to diversify our team. We're looking to get to hire people with diverse experiences and backgrounds and outlooks on life, so that we can make sure that we're providing the best service, the best product, the best whatever it is that your project is. To the rest of the world, because we want, bottom line, and you're not going to say this, but I want to sell to everybody, not just people who look like me. So if I'm going to sell to everybody and not just people who look like me, I need to include everybody and not just people who look like me. Because the only way to have that diversity in a product is to bring the diversity before you start to sell it, before you bring it to market.
That's good. And I can think at certain times in my previous company that I go, if I would try to do this, for instance, roll the tape back and go, okay, I'm going to be really, really intentional. I would have said, I don't feel like we're very diverse right now. There was a time where we were just, we had, let's see, our 5th, 6th hire was female, identified as female. But I would have said very, very quick, we're not diverse, but we want to be, but we want to make sure we're including everyone we can to do that, and maybe state even why. Like, I love that you shared the why is, one, it just, frankly, if there's a business case, which there shouldn't need to be for this, it's that diversity in a team of different experiences makes things better.
Right.
So that's something that came to mind when I was trying to scroll back on my own career and go, okay, be intentional, Cory. And then number 2, just flat out admit we don't have it right. You're going to see photos of our team and they're going to look very pale and white. And we don't necessarily we want diverse, but we're not there, but you could help us. I don't know. How does that language sit to you? Right?
Yeah. So basically you want language that says your voice matters, your experience matters, so that we can make our product better, or we can make our service better. The whole idea is that we want to be better, not we want to tokenize. We want a blackface in the company picture so that we look what we do. We hire diversity. It's not about how we look to the other people. It's about how we can provide better, because we have better diverse experiences that are coming to the table to help whatever it is that we're creating.
Mm,
So I'm my, I have a podcast, and on my podcast, if I only had white women, I would be doing a disservice to the whole WordPress community. Instead of
yeah,
having people from 6 continents, I have people from all over,
yeah,
20 something different countries. And having that representation really matters because people can hear themselves in the stories of the people that I bring forward. And
yeah.
so if people can't see themselves in your product because you are only thinking myopically in one direction, right? Then you're doing a disservice to yourselves as well, right? As
Hmm.
well as to the community.
Excellent points for sure. And I'll tell you, it's something that I know in my brain. I have to go be intentional about this.
Yeah.
It's an extra step, but it's a vital step that is missing. And why your organization exists in the first place is because we need the extra step when we're not doing it.
Yeah.
But thinking through that, going, okay, when I hire, how do I open it as wide as possible? How do I be inviting? And I really like that. So I want to, as token white guy for a second, or default white guy, I want to ask about token. That's
Mm-hmm.
and I want to just put my hands out and say, tell me more, because
Mm-hmm.
okay, you help demonstrate in my mind how I could just not try to. I don't want to be part of the more potential harm, you know.
Right.
And I
Mm-hmm.
realized, I'm saying this as myself now, that I have been, and I want to be part of the wave that is the inviting. And so when I hear a token, I go, okay, tell me more about this. Tell me how I can, like you said, it's not just saying, hey, we need a Black person on our team.
Right.
So, it is saying, like, I loved how you said that. We want a diverse set of experiences
Mm-hmm.
that come from all people in here. But tell me the contrast there. We're
Sure.
talk me through that so I understand it better, please.
So it's about intention, right? So one of the things that we put out in a lot of what we put out in social and everything is representation without tokenization, because tokenized just means, you have that person on the team to look better.
Mm,
Representation means there's an intention to do better and to be better and to make better. So, like I said, if it's a podcast and you are intentionally being more diverse and including underrepresented populations, your podcast just became richer and offers way more experience. So more people are likely to learn from it and also identify with it. The same
mm,
goes for products, the same goes for services, teams, your blog, all of that. If everything comes from a homogeneous, root, then you're really only serving a small population and not the grand population. And so it's all about intention.
mm. Yeah, when you keep saying homogenous, I think, yeah, guilty for sure. Uh, and
We're
and
not
I
here, we're not here to make anybody feel bad. We're here to help them grow.
absolutely, and I really appreciate that. I know your tone. I want to just put myself out there to go, like, we can make progress. And what I tend to have been doing now is go ask questions first before I think I just know the answer. And so I like that we intend to do better, that business, that any life is better with diversity, and that unique voices and their experiences at our table are going to make all of us better. I can totally see that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I think there could be some uh people that have the heart to do right, and I'm saying as myself too, and that inadvertently, like right here, making sure we reset to our core is the message I think I'm hearing for you, is reset
Mm-hmm.
to the core. Do and be better about diversity, about reaching people that have not had these opportunities like I have most of my life,
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And I think that's very powerful. And hooking it to a why, which is, I mean, it's a business case, which is diverse teams are better teams.
Mm-hmm. And recognizing privilege is huge. And there's been a lot
Mm,
of conversation over the last year about privilege. One of the
mm-hmm.
conversations Allie and I had on our vlog recently, underrepresentedintech.com, we have a vlog. So every Thursday we have a video conversation and post it out there. And some of it's going to be controversial. But one of the things we talked about was privilege, because somebody said there's no barrier to having your own podcast. Anybody could have a podcast. If a person of color wants to be on a podcast, they can just build their own podcast. The truth of that is that, yes, perhaps you can use the equipment you already own. You can use free software. You can use Audacity, whatever. You can get a website for pretty darn cheap. And it doesn't cost anything if you're using like anchor.fm or something to actually put your podcast out there. that doesn't mean there's no barrier to entry, because as let's say as a woman, let's say I was a woman, let's say I was a lot younger than I am, let's say I was a woman in her early 30s. And when I was a woman in her early 30s, I was a single mom, working full time, raising a daughter by myself. So what were my barriers, or how was I to find time around that to build my own podcast, as opposed to podcasts that already exist that hire somebody to come in, right? So recently there was somebody who was hired in to do a podcast. If they had hired, let's say, a young woman with a family, now she's actually getting paid to do it. And so she's actually providing for her family, not taking away time that may or may not eventually end up in some kind of remuneration. So there always is a barrier to entry. Sometimes it's simply time, but time is huge. And so we have to think about all of that before we open our mouths and say there is no barrier. There's barriers to entry to applying for a new job. Regardless of who you are, you have to take the time. You perhaps are, you know, risking the current job that you have now. There's all kinds of barriers to applying for a job. So having somebody reach out to you and say, we've seen your body of work, we'd love for you to at least apply. I can't guarantee you a job, but I'd love for you to apply, says, I'm not an imposter. I've been asked to do this. And if this is a good match, it's worth my time to do it and take that investment of time to do that, to be on a podcast, to write a blog post, those kinds of things.
I'll tell you, late last was around August last year. I met an amazing couple. They're clinicians. They run a treatment center in Illinois, and Steve and Lisa Lackey. And Lisa I was hosting the webinar, a continuing education webinar for therapists, just hosting it. Lisa was the talent, of course, and it was all about race. And it was so it was in a very positive way, confrontational toward my heart, to say, wow, I've either had these and had to examine myself. And it was so enlightening to go, like, because you're right. I mean, I have looked back on my life, and even talking to Steve, who I work with every week now in my mental health startup. He's been arrested, falsely arrested. So has his sons. And I think I was driving down the road, and late last year, now I've rectified this, but I had an out of date tag, and I was driving down the road, and a police officer came behind me. But I realized the privilege I had was I wasn't afraid for my life. Right. I was afraid I'd get a ticket, but I wasn't afraid if I got pulled over that I could potentially, And so our relationship has helped me really kind of start to do that. And conversations like this that we put out there, and start to really understand that on the other side of the perspective, there are these barriers that I wrote it down, barrier to entry, and just try to understand those empathetically and be a part of the progress and not the injuries.
Sometimes that's even saying right in your application process that we will do interviews at your convenience, recognizing that some people can't take time away from their day jobs to apply for the next job. Or they can't take time away from when they're with their children, and finding somebody to babysit so that they can apply for a job. But being able to open up your schedule to evening hours or to earlier morning hours reduces that barrier as well.
I don't have the statistics, Michelle, but particularly with COVID, the amount of females, moms that have come out of the workforce is staggering. It's really huge, because it often falls to the mom. And so I resonated with that, because I saw my wife, Lindsay, work through that. We intended for her to keep working even after we had our kiddos. Our first one, Callaway, had hip dysplasia, double hip dysplasia, had to be in a full body cast. And Lindsay goes, I'm going to stay home with Callaway. And then to see her try to transition from a political career and then get out of a career outside of her, or home or whatever, and try to re-enter was incredibly stressful and pressure for her. I've asked her to talk about that too, because now she's a prolific entrepreneur and had transitioned her career. And so many people over the years, Michelle, have asked her, I've been around her at conferences, obviously, and they've been like, tell me your story. Tell me how you transitioned out of that. Because it doesn't equate for me. I was working the entire time, I was able to do that, and she stayed with our kiddos. But just seeing it firsthand, I go, the fear, the imposter syndrome you're talking about, and
Mhm.
those barriers were very real for her. And I see
Mhm.
that more and more every day. I work with actually an illustrator, amazing illustrator that's helped me do things like this snowball illustration here. And around December, I wasn't hearing back from her as fast, as I thought. And I came back and she goes, "Oh, sorry." She's basically a stay-at-home mom and
Mhm.
trying to do part-time work while her husband happens to be a nurse and all that stuff.
Right.
And the plight is real. And I'm only sharing that because I've
Mhm.
seen that particular
Imagine
experience.
if she had the opportunity to have a full-time job with the pay equal to what other men in the position
Mhm,
have. She'd be able to afford health, childcare for her children and
mhm,
go full force on the job that she loves and have it all, right? So nobody ever says to a man, "How do you balance home and work?" But they ask women that all the time, right? So we get
mhm,
asked, "How do we balance child raising and having a career?" Nobody asks men that. They
mhm,
just don't, because it's assumed that you have somebody at home taking care of your children for you, right?
mhm,
And how many guys over the years say, "Oh, I can't go out, I'm babysitting my kids." No, you're not babysitting your kids, you're raising them, you're parenting your kids, right?
mhm,
So
mhm,
just the way that the terminologies we use and the language that we apply to things actually shows our privilege a lot of the time.
mhm,
And you're right. Like, I can imagine if I said to you, and I know you, I know your heart, if I said,
mhm,
"Wow, I'm so impressed with the work you do," half the time you say to me, "Well, my wife's the real rock star. You should see what she does," right?
mhm.
So acknowledging the people who are doing amazing things is another way that we can recognize privilege for sure.
Truly, some of my favorite entrepreneurs are female entrepreneurs because, yeah, incredible. That I go and I'm saying by me going, I don't have that kind of grit, discipline. I work with one female entrepreneur and we're on a Zoom call and she's changing her she's fostered and hopefully adopted the baby, changing it, having this in conversation with me. And I'm like, I'm trying to take everything I can. And so I'm very, very impressed by so many of the female entrepreneurs because I, my theory is have to put up with so much, have to go, the barrier that you're talking about is so high that I just I go, oh, I can't do half of that, so I'm very, very impressed for sure.
Yeah,
um
a
okay,
lot of pretty awesome people out there for sure.
absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about conferences. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. The barriers, we've talked about that. One thing we haven't talked about is pay range.
Mhm.
This one I just kind of know. I don't have any statistics, but just the disparity between male and female salaries is pretty still. The ceiling is definitely there in the disparity.
Here in the
Um,
United States, we have something called Equal Pay Day. And what Equal Pay Day is how far into the next year a woman has to work to make the salary of a man doing the same job in the previous year. So
mm,
Equal Pay Day usually falls mid-April. So all things being equal, if I had the same job as a man
mm,
and he worked till December, I would have to work till mid-April to make the same salary that he did the previous year.
mm,
It becomes even more alarming when you start to add ethnicity to those same women. So a woman who is a Black woman has to work into August to make what a man did the previous year. A woman who's a Native American into September, and a woman who is Hispanic has to work into October, towards the end of October, so almost 2 full years to make the same salary that a man doing the same job does. So yeah, there's a lot of disparity, and I don't have statistics on ethnic changes within the same gender orientation or gender. So I couldn't tell you a Black man to a white man what that looks like. But I specifically have studied over the years what women make, and it's alarming.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all kind of shake our head on that and know it's a real
Mhm.
thing. Okay. Well, if you have questions for Michelle, topics you want to talk about with Michelle, please put those in the Q&A button right below our video. Michelle, while they're doing that, I want to ask, what have I missed? And I'm here to learn and then to ask questions and to listen. But what have I missed that we should talk about?
So one of the things that I love about our website, so Underrepresented in Tech, is we launched this kind of in November. We kind of put it out there to the world. And the first thing that people started asking was, how can we support this? Which I
Mm-hmm.
thought was phenomenal. And we didn't intend to make money off this in any way, shape, or form. And indeed, we are not making money off this. But we
Mm-hmm.
have had people, because people asked, we did put the tip jar on our website. And we've made a little bit of money just to kind of value the work that we're doing. Nowhere
Mm-hmm.
near what two people putting in the amount of time that we put in there is worth. And we do have in-kind sponsorships, but we don't take corporate sponsorships. We don't do anything like that. The whole purpose is to be able to help people be found and help you find people to do what you do. But because I always say this, and you and I have had a conversation about things in the past. The more good you do in the world, the bigger the target on your back becomes. And so,
Mm-hmm.
even with Underrepresented in Tech, we have come under fire for even doing things like allowing people who begged us to give a little bit of money and to honor the work we do, to put that on there as profiting off of the people that we purport to help. And nothing could be further from the truth. We absolutely 100% appreciate that people have valued our time a little bit. And I just really wanted to say this, and I appreciate that you giving me the opportunity to say it. It's not about making money. It really isn't. That all of the sponsors that you see at the bottom have just given us their plugin or their hosting, or they've done an audit of our site for accessibility. No corporations are spending money, and they're not, and we don't allow them to, put themselves on there so that they look diverse. Literally, they have done what they can to try to help us move forward by just giving us their services and their products. So I just wanted to put that out there too.
Well, like I saw Gravity View and I know Zach, and he's an awesome
Yeah.
guy. But being able to display that
Mhm.
the profiles and everything is really fantastic. It hurts my heart even more to hear that as you're trying to do good work, there are people that here's
Yeah.
what there's this principle. You're on YouTube, and you're like, this is the most amazing TED Talk or whatever it is, and you go, there's got to be 5 trolls. There's got to be 5 people that go down, down
Yeah.
arrow. And you're like, really? Like,
Yeah.
one, we have to have a down arrow anyway, or down thumb anyway. But the fact that no matter what you do, someone will down thumb it
Mhm.
down, kind of thing. So, but
Yeah.
I love the work that you're doing, and I want to get more attention to it. And I personally want to be part of the solution, not part of that holds us and drags us back, particularly for these
That's
people
great.
groups.
We're going to start blogging. So we're asking the people who are in our database to write their stories so we can blog
Oh
about
yeah.
them and tell the things that they're doing and let them showcase themselves pretty well. So that's exciting. That's coming up. The vlog series we just started, we talk about some controversial stuff. We talk about what we're doing. And because we do honor our own work, we are actually starting to offer services now. And the services that we offer are for hire. So people can pick our brains, that we can help them with marketing, and we can
Mhm.
help them, with their website and things like that, so that they can increase the diversity in their company. That has nothing to do with charging people to use the database or to be in the database. That is strictly something off to the side because we can't give hundreds of hours of our time for free. So you will see that. That's a brand new thing on the website, is offer that services. And I'm not here to sell that or market that, but I'm just in full disclosure when you say, but they are making money. That's one little service that we're offering on the side.
Well, if my opinion matters, I would say you do good in the world, you deserve to do well in the world too. And I love the work that you're doing, and I have absolutely no problem with it, of course. So someone's out there, someone is going, I'm underrepresented, someone is
Mhm.
in a people group we've talked about. What do they need to do, Michelle?
They just need to go to underrepresentedintech.com, click the join the database. There's a series of questions that you'll be asked, including what makes you underrepresented, because we do gatekeep, because we don't judge anybody in there. We absolutely want to make sure that we are representing the right people
Mhm.
who are underrepresented. And then you can upload a photo of yourself, so you have a headshot in there. It's not required. Some people don't want to put that in there. We never disclose on the website what makes you a diverse person. We never
Mhm.
disclose on there what makes you underrepresented. Yes, if you see my face, you know that I'm a woman. You can guess that that's probably why. There are white men on the data in the database as well, but there are things that make people underrepresented that are not physical traits, right? So we have neurodivergent people, we have people LGBTQ plus community, and we have people who are older and people who have disabilities. So keep that in mind when you do see somebody on there. It's not our job to announce what somebody's diversity is, just to represent them and include them in the database. And if you are looking, because we have Gravity View on there, you can search that database for people for whatever your project is. So if you're looking for somebody who knows WordPress and wants to be on a podcast, great. You can search specifically under those terms and you can make offers and reach out to people directly. We don't actually gatekeep any of the conversations that happen between people. There's no form to fill out on the website to get in touch with them. We are not keeping any of that information. We're not keeping your information. We just want to make them accessible. So it's pretty cool.
Excellent. Okay. Be sure you go to underrepresentedintech.com. If you're one that is underrepresented, please submit your profile there. And if you're looking for your next hire or co-founder or anything in between, what a great database to go through and search. When you were talking about photos, there's something that just hurt my heart that Steve, who I've worked with in Illinois, and he said that for the first couple of years of their practice, their treatment center, they didn't put their photos on their website because they were African-American and thought, and that was a barrier. And it just hurt my heart that one, they had to do that for first and foremost. So I totally get that if they choose not to put their photo and totally get those barriers. Michelle, it has been awesome. I've learned a lot. I've got notes here to how I can make change in my own life and sphere of influence. And I so much appreciate you. Where can they find out more about you too?
Yep. So go to underrepresentedtech.com. If you were looking for more information about the project, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Michelle Ames. It's so hard to change your name once you're divorced. So it's always going to be there as at Michelle Ames. My DMs are open. I'm always happy to serve as a resource to people. If you have questions, reach out to me there or email me at michelle@worksbymichelle.com.
Michelle Frechette, underrepresentedintech.com. Thank you, my friend. I'll see you in about like 15 to 20 minutes for our board meeting. So I so much appreciate.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to talk about passion projects like this, and I appreciate your openness to it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for listening in. poststatus.com, where we host conversations like this, where WordPress professionals, our community over there is rocking. Come and join us. All right. Thanks everybody for being here today.
Bye.